Hi, everybody. My name is Julie Mayo, and I work with the AC Hunter Public Library, and I'm really happy to be welcoming Rob Tizzard, financial wizard, uh, to the stage today.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for showing up for the Budgeting 101 course. Um, my name is Rob Tizzard, and I own a small budget a firm in the Avalon called NewFound Wealth Advisors, and we help all sorts of Newfoundlanders with different financial needs, questions, concerns. But our main goal is financial literacy training. So we do a lot of training, a lot through the AC Hunter Library on topics such as budgeting, RRSPs versus TFSAs, investing, insurance, and we've done some Q&As and AMAs as well, where people can just come on and ask any questions that they have. So this is a disclosure. It's just a generic disclosure that we've drafted for the presentation that essentially says that this isn't a direct solicitation for business. It is not anything that has any guarantees written in the presentation, and that, as always, you should seek individual advice with regards to your specific needs and have somebody who will do a full analysis for you. This is just a brief overview and some general suggestions that have worked for other clients of ours in the past, and we're just going to share them with you. So who am I? So I was born and raised in St. John's. I actually grew up on Wicklow Street over by the Avalon Mall and the Red Cross building. I moved away when I was in my early 20s to BC, and I lived there for about 18 years. And then I came back in 2012. When I was in BC, actually, I did IT for a number of years. I was in real estate, both commercial and residential, mortgage broking, and then I got into securities and securities trading. And then I decided to bring my family home because I had my wife and my two small children at the time. It's amazing that they're now 15 and 12, which blows my mind. But we decided to bring them home and raise them in Newfoundland. And I sold my business out there, and we came here, and we started our practice. My father actually was also in the industry previous to me, and he had been in the industry since, I believe, the late 90s. And our business today, like I said earlier, is mostly financial literacy. Our goal is to provide 99% education, 1% implementation. The real key is changing the mind versus changing before we can change our habits, which is with anything, whether it's dieting or budgeting or saving, or if we don't change what's up top, nothing below will change. So the agenda for tonight's presentation is why budget, when to budget, the money mentality. Again, we're going to be speaking a lot about up here because, you know, it's interesting. One of my mentors, Jim Rohn, and I always mention Jim Rohn in almost every presentation. It's JIMROHN. Go watch any of his videos on YouTube. They'll change your life. You know, Jim really teaches that a lot of times we externalize our problems, you know, by saying taxes are too high, or so-and-so is in power and I can't get ahead because of the liberals, and I don't make enough money. I did this and this and this. A lot of it comes down to, unless we're willing to change, nothing will change for us. So what we learn is that, you know, the wind is going to blow, the sun is going to shine, the world is going to carry on, but how we adapt to it is what's going to make the biggest difference. And that comes down to the money mentality. Types of effective budgeting. So we're going to go over some effective budgeting types, and then a Q&A. So, and I've also got a handout at the end, which is like a little budgeting sheet as well. So you need to have a why in order to move forward. I use a little analogy sometimes, and Julie, you can tell me if I'm going a little long or over or whatever, but I really love this analogy, is that, and especially it works for parents mainly. And this is the analogy, and I'll do it as quickly as possible. So I say to people, you know, if I lay a board on the ground and it's, I don't know, 20 feet long, and it's a nice thick piece of wood, you know, really nice and wide, you can walk across it, probably 12 inches wide, a foot across, and I say, would you walk across the board on the ground? People would say, yes, of course. And then I say, I'll put it on 2 chairs. Would you walk across it now? Well, some will say yes, some will say no. I put it on top of 2 ladders. Would you do it now? Some will say yes, most will say no. But then you can start adding in a little money. Would you do it for $10, $100? And they'll probably go across it. Then you bring it to the next extreme, where you put it across 2 10-story buildings. And you say, would you go across it now? And the money has to be much higher when you want to get there. And then you say, okay, well, now I'm going to light the building on fire on the other side. Would you still go? And the people go, well, no. And then the money gets higher and higher and higher and higher and higher. Normally, you're going to lose out on people at that point. But when it comes down to this question, what if your children are on the other roof? Now the money goes out the window. All the other considerations go out the window because now you know why you're going to go across that board. And if you have a why, you'll do whatever it takes to get to that roof or to get to that destination. So there's a ton of different reasons you can have. We talk about newfound wealth advisors and we say wealth because wealth is so broad. It can mean tackling debt, saving for a house, reaching other financial goals. It could be saving for your children's education. It could be planning a trip around the world when you retire. It could be just simple budgeting. But everybody is different. No one is greater than another. And we're all fairly even when it comes to the financial literacy and education playing field. And there's nothing that works for everyone. If there was, the banks would have the solution already. You have to have an individual plan that matches your goals or your why, and you only compete with yourself. I use the analogy, Robert Kiyosaki writes about it in Rich Dad, Poor Dad, where he explains the rat race. And the rat race is essentially the money mentality mind of where we live within our income. So for example, if you make $1,000 a month, you're going to normally spend approximately 80% of that money. The kicker is if you get a raise to $2,000 a month, you're still going to be in the 80%. And it's just because you will always keep your mentality about money in line with the money as it grows. So it's not about how much you earn. That's the key takeaway. A lot of people say, well, what's the point of saving now? I only make X. Well, if you're going to try and save 10% of your money and you're making 1,000 now, it's a lot easier to write a check for 10% of 1,000 than 10% of 100,000, especially if you don't have the mindset going into it. The rat race. So when to plan? A lot of people, I hear this. I don't have the money to plan. The mentality comes before the money, like I was just saying. So when you're talking about saving a little bit of money or doing more with your money, it doesn't matter whether it's $1, it doesn't matter whether it's $1,000 or $100,000. And I have clients in each of those ranges. A lot of them, when we first get together, are living paycheck to paycheck, whether it's a $300,000 a year paycheck or whether it's a $30,000 a year paycheck. Everybody is in the same sort of mentality when it comes to money. Wow, it looks like I'm actually saying all the things that are on the slides before we even get there. Most people live within 20%. The other real key thing that Jim Rohn says a lot, I know I'm harping on Jim Rohn, I probably shouldn't harp on him so much, is, he says there's too much month at the end of the money. I love that line because we'll oftentimes get to the 20th and there's nothing left. And he always says that the difference between the people that appear to have money and don't have money is a simple change in philosophy. And that is the people who seem to struggle a lot with money, which is the majority of us, they spend their money and invest what's left. And again, we use the word invest very loosely here. Invest can mean many different things. The wealthier people will invest their money and then spend what's left. It's a very simple change in the wording. So the people, so we'll use have and have nots, okay, just for easier definitions. So the have nots will say, I'm going to spend my money and invest what's left. The problem is there's never anything left. The haves will invest their money and then spend what's left. So they're putting the budgeting before the expenses. And this is just the numbers on the rat race. So the mentality of the finances keep you in the 80% no matter what. And oftentimes that's why when we get a raise, it just doesn't feel like it's much, and this is where it comes from. It's not that it's not that much, but after taxes and everything else and living within your money mentality mindset, that's sort of how it plays out. So how can we change it? So I've come up with what I call the difference between a wish and a plan. And most people wish that things are different. Heck, I know I do from time to time, just for fun, excuse me. Some people wish to be thinner. Some people wish to be wealthier. Some people wish to travel more. Some people wish to have more happiness in their life. but we're going to go over why a wish is different than a plan. So what does a wish really stand for? I say a wish is why I still hurt. Because a wish is just that, it's just a wish. Whereas a plan is prioritizing life after necessities. So when we talk about a plan, so for example, here's a great example. If we wish we were to lose weight, and I woke up every morning or I went to bed every night and said, I wish I could lose weight. Tomorrow I wish I could lose weight. Versus, tomorrow I'm going to take one actionable step towards that. Versus wishing, now you're starting a plan. And that's the key difference. I in the session that we did live, I always use the thought experiment that when I go to sleep sometimes, I'll pretend I'll wish, oh, it'd be great if I could be Superman, have Superman's powers. But then I say to myself, okay, so I wake up and I have Superman's powers. How the heck am I getting out of the house without going through the roof or, accidentally killing everyone around me or, sorry to be macabre. It's funny, but it's a cute thought experiment. And then I actually said in the session, I said, the world has a lot of problems. What would you do if you had Superman's powers for an hour to solve the world's problems? And you know what? It's really fun to think about. You've got super speed, flight, invulnerability. I mean, you can literally do anything you want. Could you solve the world's problems in an hour if you had unlimited power? It's a tough call. It's a tough thing to think about. But you would definitely not be able to do it if you didn't have a plan. You got the wish. Now you got to use it. And then we're going to talk about the 50-20-30 rule. This is a generic budgeting process that you can use, and it does work for a lot of people. So 50% of your net income can go towards needs and necessities. A lot of people think that that's the 20, because a lot of people believe that it's all about sacrifice. I can't live now and save for later. I can't save for later and live now. It's not actually true. You can. There are efficiencies that can be made in what most people do from day to day that are not super painful and do have lasting effects. So some of the necessities are food, clothing, housing, and minimum debt payments. So when we look at that, food and housing are the big ones. Most people come with clothes. And housing, when they look at mortgages, for example, there is a threshold where your housing expense cannot reach a specific percentage of your all-in income. And the 50% rule is part of that. 20% can go towards financial goals. Now, these aren't firm numbers. You can have it as the 40-30-30 rule. We can have it as so saying that you want to save 20%, if you save 5, it's a start. You save 10, it's a start. And really, it's a lot about progress, not perfection. So having an emergency fund, and I know it sounds tough, investments, retirement savings, all of those things count. Learning about and finding somebody that you're comfortable to speak with about some of these things and having them make sense to you makes the difference. Like understanding, how does an RRSP work? And how do you get back the taxes? And what does that look like? How does that save you money at the end of the year? 30% of your income should go towards your wants. And that's pretty high. I mean, dining out, entertainment, stuff like that, I think 30% is pretty high. And most people, when they see the 50-20-30 rule, they're like, that's not actually that bad. I could probably do that. Again, they're subjective, can be adjusted to your plan. We just call it the 50-20-30 rule. So the philosophy of saving, I spend my money and invest the rest, or I invest my money and spend the rest. Now, again, I want to go back to what I mean by invest. Invest could be, I'm going to buy a book that's going to make me better. I'm going to buy a gym membership that's going to make me healthier. I'm going to invest in me. The more that you invest in yourself, the more you're going to bring yourself to the market. And by the market, I mean just basically the world. And whether that's in relationships or whether that's in your finances or whether that's in your employment, the more value you bring to the marketplace, the more valuable you're going to be. And when we talk about investing again is not just about money. I mean, often you need money to invest in what you want to do, whether it's a book or a gym membership or anything like that. But I want to make sure that I'm clear on investing is meaning to put it towards yourself and put it towards the things that are going to allow you to succeed in life. And that goes to what our motto is, which is whatever wealth means to you, let us help you build it. And that goes to exactly what I've been talking about. So now we're into key pieces that are going to allow you to see some actionable change if you start doing it within 2 to 3 months, maybe sooner. So if your debt is primarily credit cards, which a lot of people are, and I've seen people across the spectrum, I've seen people that think $1,000 in credit card debt is crazy. I've seen clients with $100,000 in credit card debt. So it really, it runs the gamut. So what you want to do is you want to pay more on the cards with the highest interest rate. And once you pay that off, you add the payment amount to the next card, and so on and so on. Now I'm going to show you this in an illustration, and it will make sense. So here's our math. We have 3 credit cards. I know I put in Discover card. No one has a Discover card anymore, but it's fun. It's a throwback to the people that remember Discover cards. So your total combined debt is $5,350, and you're making your minimum payments on the chart that I'm going to show you. So we determine a percentage of your income. So we pick 10% because it's a nice small number. And for some people, they may say, oh my God, 10% is crazy. It can be 5%. Again, don't get caught up in the numbers. So this is what we're going to look at. So if you do an additional payment of $340, so that means you're making $3,400 a month, 10% is $340. That's just 10%. Now, if it's easier for you to think about that weekly, think about it weekly. Bi-weekly or monthly, it all depends. And it's all the same answer, and it's all right. It's okay. You can break it down however you want. So the MasterCard has a balance of $1,850 with an interest rate of 21.9. So that's our target because it has the highest interest rate, meaning that the duration that we carry that debt is going to be more damaging than the duration of carrying the other debts, because the compound interest on the MasterCard is going to be much greater than the other two. So the minimum payment with $1,850 is $45. So we're going to add the additional $340 from the 10%. So now we're making a payment of $385. Now at the same time, don't forget, we are still making our minimum payments of the other 2 cards, but only our minimum payments because that's the only requirement for those cards. So we're going to continue at $385 a month. Now, once that's paid off, which won't take long, we're going to take the $385 and we're going to move it down to the next card with the next highest interest rate, which is 15.9, which is the Visa. So the $385 plus the minimum payment, which was $55, is now $440. And we're going to hit that for however many months it takes, which is going to be approximately 3.5 months. It's not long. And then after 4 months, the Visa card will be paid off, and now we go after the Discover card. And again, we're still at our $340. We're just adding the other minimum payments, and now we're up to $480 a month. So that will take 3 months, maybe? So the result is, after 12 months, because we've had a 4-month, a 3-month, and another 3-month, you've completely eliminated your debt. And now you are comfortable with that $480 a month investment. Again, it was an investment. You were investing in getting rid of your credit card debt. So what can you do with it? So it's important that the rollover amount you invest continues to be used now for your personal gain. When debt is in compound interest, it's the greatest threat to our financial freedom. When it's in an investment, it's the greatest benefit to our financial freedom. So I'm just going to say that one more time. When debt is using compound interest, it is the greatest threat to our financial freedom that exists. But when investments use compound interest, it is the greatest benefit. So we want to get from having our debts as compound interest and having our money go towards servicing debt to go towards servicing our investment. Again, investment we use as a loose term. So can small changes make a difference? Now this is extremely interesting. So if an airplane leaves LA and it flies straight along to Rome, Italy, it takes 12 hours and it'll go in a straight line. If it's 1 degree off, it's either going to end up in Africa or Austria. And that's a difference of, I think I did it as 4,000 kilometers. I'd have to do the math again, unless I have it in my slide. But what that means is a small a small correction can make a lasting difference over distance or over time. So it's about small, consistent adjustments in the right direction. And one of the greats said, you know, small errors in judgment repeated daily lead to catastrophe. But the opposite is also true. It can also lead to success with small changes. And it only takes 1 degree. So it's very important to understand. Daily habits repeated over and over again have huge impact later on your life. So how much money does a lottery winner have after 3 to 5 years? So this goes into the money mentality piece again. Um, my mentor always said, make a million for what a million makes of you. And I think Jim Rohn even said that. So what that means is, who do you have to become? What type of person do you have to become? What skills do you need to learn? What language do you need to adopt? What type of person do you need to become in order to make $1 million? And it's not the average Joe. It's not. And it's going to take some skill. It's going to take some learning. It's going to take some effort, but it's very important. If you win money, meaning nothing up here changed, but you just all of a sudden have a huge pot of money, such as a lottery, some will have some, most will be broke, and some will be bankrupt. So you can go from a huge lottery win to being in worse financial state. And it's because your mind hasn't adjusted to the numbers that you're in. So it's very important to understand that. New money equals new problems. And that goes right back to where we started of, if I had money, I would start investing. If I did this, I would start. If I had it, I would do it. If I won the lottery, I would. No, that's absolutely the opposite. You have to start small and understand the key pieces to build the house. If the base isn't strong, the top won't last. So this is my monthly budget worksheet. It's fairly basic. It starts with your savings and your checking accounts, your savings goals, again, your why, talking about your income, all of your expenses. You can put some more on the bottom. You can cross some off. Feel free to print it and mark it up as much as you want.
Well, thank you so much for spending some time with us and sharing all your wealth of knowledge. You see what I did there? I'm so smart.
So good. So
I'm
good.
so smart. But yeah, no, we really appreciate it. And, the library loves you. So thanks again for everything.